Hey guys, welcome back to my kitchen. Today I want to show you how to make one of the first things I ever learned how to cook at my very first job, pizza. I'm going to show you how to make the dough and the sauce. Check the description box below for the full ingredients list, and if you like the recipe, don't forget to hit that like button and consider subscribing if you want to see more recipes. Let's get started. I'm going to start by making the sauce. In a small pot, add 425 grams of tomato puree. Next, I'll add 120 milliliters of water, 15 milliliters of white vinegar, half a teaspoon of dried oregano, half a teaspoon of dried basil, an eighth of a teaspoon of chili flakes, a quarter teaspoon of garlic powder, a quarter teaspoon of onion powder, 1 tablespoon of sugar, and a quarter teaspoon of salt. Now I'll mix it well to combine all of the ingredients, and I'll turn the heat on to medium to bring it up to a simmer. When it's simmering, I'll turn the heat down to low and continue to cook it for about an hour or until it's reduced by about half. When the sauce is finished cooking, remove it from the heat and allow it to cool completely. Now to make the dough, into a large mixing bowl, I'll add 235 milliliters of warm water and 4 grams or about 1 teaspoon of active dry yeast. Unlike other leavening agents such as baking soda or baking powder, yeast is a live microorganism, and like you or I, it's susceptible to changes in temperature. What this means is the temperature of your water and the temperature of your kitchen will affect how quickly the yeast works, if at all. If the temperature of your water is below 100 degrees Fahrenheit, it likely won't be warm enough to activate the yeast. Whereas if the temperature is above 130 degrees Fahrenheit, it will begin to kill the yeast, both of which result in a dough that won't rise. The optimal temperature for yeast is between 105 and 115 degrees Fahrenheit. If you don't have a thermometer to test the temperature, put a few drops of water on your wrist and it should feel just slightly warmer than body temperature. Stir the yeast into the water, then add 12 grams of sugar and allow that to sit for about 10 minutes until it becomes foamy. This first step in making the dough is called proofing the yeast. This starts the fermentation process in which the enzymes in the yeast convert the sugar into carbon dioxide and alcohol. This gives the dough its flavor and causes it to rise. Proofing the yeast is also a great way to test the viability of your yeast. If it doesn't foam after about 10 minutes, it's likely dead and the dough won't rise. If your yeast has bloomed after 10 minutes, add 360 grams of all-purpose flour and 7 grams of salt. Now I'll stir that with a spoon until it starts to come together. If you have a mixer with a dough hook attachment, you can use that, but I prefer to knead by hand because it allows for better control. Knead the dough a few times, then add 10 milliliters of olive oil and continue to knead the dough until all of the ingredients are combined. When the dough has come together, you can continue to knead it in the bowl, but I find it much easier to knead the dough on a counter or a table. Dust the surface with flour and continue to knead the dough for about 8 to 10 minutes. To knead the dough, use your fingertips to pull the dough towards you and fold it over itself. Then with the palm of your hand, push down and out away from you, stretching the dough. When the flour and water are first mixed, the gluten proteins are tangled and disorganized. Kneading the dough aligns the proteins and forms long strands of gluten. These gluten strands are very stretchy. This gives the dough structure, allowing it to rise evenly and to stretch without ripping. The gluten strands will form naturally over time, but kneading the dough speeds up this process significantly. After 8 to 10 minutes of kneading the dough, I'm going to form it into a tight ball by folding it in on itself, then twisting off the bottom to close the seam. Now I'll grab the mixing bowl I used earlier and I'm going to lightly brush that with olive oil. Put your dough into the bowl, then lightly brush it with more olive oil, making sure that it's well coated all around. Then lightly cover the dough with plastic wrap and wrap the bowl and let it sit until the dough increases in size by about 50%. Now I'll grab a pan lined with parchment paper and I'm going to lightly brush that with olive oil. Uncover the dough and transfer it to your pan or a cutting board, and using a sharp knife, cut the dough in half. I usually measure it by eye, but if you prefer, you can weigh the dough for a more uniform size. It can also be cut to make 3 smaller pizzas. Once again, form the dough into a tight ball by folding it in on itself and twisting off the bottom. This helps the dough rise up instead of spreading out. Now I'll brush the dough with more olive oil to stop it from sticking to the plastic wrap and to prevent the dough from drying out. When the dough dries out, it becomes very hard to stretch. Cover it lightly but well. It needs room to expand without being exposed to the air. Place the dough into the fridge for at least 6 hours or overnight. At colder temperatures, the yeast will produce carbon dioxide at a much slower rate, resulting in a slower rising dough. This allows the starches in the flour more time to break down into sugars, ethanol, and acids, giving the dough a more complex flavor. This is called cold proofing. If you don't have time to let the dough cold proof, you can let it rise at room temperature, but it won't have the same depth of flavor and will taste more like yeast. Pull the dough from the fridge about 20 minutes before cooking. It should be doubled in size and it won't bounce back when it's poked. Lightly brush the pan with olive oil, then use your fingers to flatten out the dough. Grab the far edge of the dough and gently stretch it away from you, turning the pan a few degrees with each stretch. Try to keep the dough at an even thickness. If you notice any spots are too thin or too thick, push with your fingers to even them out and fix them as they appear. Next, with a fork, poke holes across the entire surface of the dough, but don't poke through to the pan. This will prevent bubbles from forming when it cooks. Now sauce the pizza. Keep in mind that if you like light or extra sauce, it can affect the cooking time. I always put toppings such as pepperoni, mushrooms, chicken, or bacon underneath the cheese because it helps keep them from drying out and overcooking. Now add your cheese. The most common cheese to use would be mozzarella, but some pizzerias also blend their mozzarella with provolone. Add any additional toppings and bake the pizza in a preheated oven at 550 degrees Fahrenheit for 10 to 11 minutes, removing the pan for the final 3 minutes of cooking. The cooking time is just a guideline. I usually cook my pizza until the cheese and crust are golden brown. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you liked the recipe, don't forget to hit that like button and consider subscribing if you want to see more recipes. If you tried the pizza, let me know in the comments how it goes, or if you have any requests for future videos. Till next time, take care and good luck cooking.